Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show, where today, Denny Carter and I will be previewing the NFC North with the help of MLive.com's Ben Raven and NBC Sports Chicago's Alex Shapiro. Ben will be joining us right off the jump to talk the Detroit Football Lions with Alex about 30 minutes into the show to discuss the much-changed Chicago Bears. In between, Denny and I will be talking the Packers, and there's a fourth team in this division, I believe the Minnesota Vikings. First, it's Ben Raven from NLive.com at Benjamin S. Raven on Twitter. Ben, we try to get beat writers from like the two most interesting teams in the division, and It's the second year in a row the Lions have been considered an interesting team. It's quite the change from the past 30 years.
Oh man, you talk about change. I mean, this year is it's just so different than my first even 4 years on the beat. I mean, last year was different with Hard Knocks and actual real expectations, but this year it's like, wow, it's July and they're still the NFC North favorites. Like, all right, this is real. Let's go. This is brand new. So yeah, no doubt about that.
Yeah, and it's funny though, because people were on the Lions bandwagon last year. Now some of like the sharps, the smarts, people are actually smart in this industry, kind of off the Lions. We'll just get right into it. But not off the Lions, but they were off. They had thought the Lions had a flawless decision-making process. Then came the pick heard around the world, at least in fantasy circles, with the Lions taking a change of pace running back Jahmyr Gibbs at number 12 overall. Especially eye-opening after they gave David Montgomery real money and free agency, a legitimate contract, one that says he's going to have a role and be around. Just what is the sense around the team about how these touches are going to be divvied up in this backfield? Is it as similar as Gibbs? Is it as simple as Gibbs like sliding into the DeAndre Swift role and David Montgomery sliding into the Jamal Williams role?
No, I think it's going to be more than that. And I think that's what intrigued them by kind of the shakeup with both, because while Jamal Williams had that awesome season last year, I think 16 or 15 of those touchdowns came within the 1.5 or 2 yard line. I mean, David Montgomery's got a lot more elusiveness to his game and gets the chance to play behind an NFL offensive line for the first time in his career. So that could make a little difference right there. But I think we've already seen it through the spring and the offseason program that Gibbs and Montgomery shared the field. When Montgomery was healthy, he got nicked up a little bit, but they were sharing the field a lot more than we ever saw with Swift and Williams. So I think that's going to be a different thing here, because I do think the Lions are viewing Gibbs as so much more as a running back. We're seeing him in the slot. We're seeing him line up in the backfield with Montgomery and go out wide. So I think it's going to be, and it's at its core value, it's going to be like that. They're going to have those similar core functions, but I think you're going to see a lot more sharing the fields, 2 running back looks, getting Gibbs in there, even when Montgomery is out there.
We think it'll be Montgomery near the goal line in a role that produced 18 touchdowns last year. I wonder if the Lions offense can run as hot as it did last year, but do you think it'll be Demont, at least in the Jamal role around the goal line?
I do. He's the guy that I keep pointing to is like, this is his breakout chance right here. Like, and not just like that's a really nice season for him. Like, oh, this guy's legit. Like, he gets to be like, that's not just this offensive line isn't just good. It's got a potential to be one of, if not the league's best. And it's a group that hasn't played a regular season snap together. So, I mean, I just think he is someone, he's going to get most of those goal line looks. There's not much of a competition, in my opinion, at least for those looks. I mean, there is, like you said, that this is a team that ran for a lot of short yardage touchdowns. And I mean, double digits seem very, very, very within his grasp.
You mentioned, how the backfield might be divvied up. I think a lot of people in the fantasy community are sort of writing off David Montgomery's pass catching role or pass catching ability. I think, traditionally he has been used more as a pass catcher than Jamal Williams has, especially in Green Bay. Do you think that role will also be split between him and Gibbs, or do you see Gibbs really just taking over there?
I mean, Gibbs is going to get the DeAndre Swift level of targets, if not more. But I do think, that was another thing that really intrigued them. I mean, Jamal Williams was a non-factor in the passing attack, like just an absolute non-factor. And they've got plans for Montgomery. I mean, those 2 running back looks, I mean, he's running legit routes too. He's not just dipping into the flats. It's like a fallback planner and something like that. I really think they're going to tap into that too. And I like you said at the top, I mean, that's why they gave him real money. That's why they let like a heartbeat of the locker room and a guy who just had an amazing career season walk, is because they see more things that Ben Johnson can do with both of those guys. I mean, I think that's the strength of it, is Ben Johnson. I mean, if you can do something, he's going to use you in that department at least a couple times a game. And I think that was really the big shining light towards these two backs.
We've learned to trust Ben Johnson. Community. As an aside, Ben, if you can answer me this, because I just could not really grasp why the Lions dislike DeAndre Swift so much. They just seem to really not trust ask the same thing. And so, if you have any insight on that, please tell me, because I have spent unbelievable amounts of time trying to figure out why.
I think it got to a point with the frustration. Like, they loved the idea of what DeAndre could do for them 17 games a year. It just got to the point where it's like two different regimes, two different head coaches. Dan Campbell and his staff took two vastly different approaches to his off seasons through their 2 years with him. And it just the same, a really electric yet guy they couldn't depend on week in and week out. And I mean, once you got to the regular season, DeAndre Swift wasn't practicing. I mean, and say what you will about that, but I mean, he just wasn't available. You really, when I would go on for like quick hits on fantasy, is DeAndre playing this weekend? I have no idea. Like, I have absolutely no idea. So I think it was just at a point where it was like, there needs to be a fresh start for both sides here. You are super talented. Like, good luck sending you home, sending you to a great team. Maybe the only other team that might have a better offensive line this year. But it just got to a point of frustrations. And I think with Deuce leaving, I think there was a chance at just like a fresh start for them to really build the backfield the exact way they wanted. And I think Gibbs being a fresh guy out of college, they trust that availability, even though it's a rookie, a little more than what they've seen from DeAndre for 3 years. Great electric player. I mean, still might be something more, but it just got to the point where it's like, maybe you need to go somewhere else too.
It's not us. It is indeed you. Ben, I'm pretty sure I've asked you this question, but you do play fantasy, correct?
Deep.
That's what I thought.
We're in like year 22 of like a league right now. So yeah, I'm all about it. College fantasy too. Psycho.
Oh my gosh.
AL auction keeper leagues. Like,
well, there we go. There we go. Denny has no idea what the AL is. Denny will never know what the AL is. but it's sicko stuff. So I was pretty sure you were a fantasy guy. Yep. I'm going to put you on the spot. Who is scoring, let's say, more PPR points in 2023, Jahmyr Gibbs or David Montgomery?
David Montgomery. I think he's like Denny was kind of getting to. I think he's still going to be involved in the passing attack enough. And I really do think, I mean, if this is a healthy David Montgomery and you get at least 4 of those offensive line starters for like most of the season, I really think he's going to have like a double-digit touchdown, 1,000 yards, going to get looks in the passing attack, and not just as an afterthought or as a last-ditch effort. Like, I really think they see a vision with him. And it's kind of crazy how young he still is, and kind of I don't know. I really like the fit with Montgomery in this Detroit offense. I'm thinking this is like a real breakout year for him.
Yeah, from your lips to God's ears, please. Montgomery, as I've drafted, stay in the backfield a little bit here with Jared Goff. Now, Goff last year had 587 pass attempts, which if you would have told me that before the season, I would have said, wow, that must have been a miserable year for the Lions. And it turns out it wasn't. And so my question for Goff going into 2023 is, after, they've seemingly committed to him as the starter, are they comfortable with that amount of passing, or do you think they would like to, reel that in a little bit?
I think they'd like to reel it in a little bit. And I think a lot of that is because the last 5 weeks, not only did they have backfield injuries, but the rushing attack just like fell off a cliff in that, like, the last 5 or 6 games of the season. So, I mean, the offense really was like on Jared Goff's back to protect the ball and feed Amon-Ra St. Brown and make the most of it. But I think they're comfortable with that, obviously, with what they did down the stretch. And Ben Johnson's just always keeping his passing attack fresh, it seems like, with new looks week in and week out. I think they're fine with that, but I think in an ideal world, they'd probably like to take about 75 passes off of that number if they could. Mm-hmm.
75 sounds like a lot, but that sounds right to me, where I think a rational coaching staff would assume that was maybe like a career year for Jared Goff. And so they approached the offseason and used a number 12 pick on a running back. So it just, the reasoning checks out. And it just seems like this is a very smart team, and they're not hitting on 17, basically, with Jared Goff. And this is a quick aside. Do you think it was always the intention to build around Jared Goff, or was this kind of done on the fly after they overachieved?
I think it was done. I think because it was so brutal that first year, it even had a little part last year. I think it was always open-ended, but I don't think this was the long-term plan at all to be where like going into 2023, 2024, and you're like, yeah, Jared Goff's the guy in Detroit. It looks like moving forward, bearing a complete collapse to where he was before he got here. But no, I think they went into it. I mean, I've joked since the beginning that Brad Holmes got there. Love something like Brad Holmes loves Jared Goff, but like I do think that like this was open-ended. Like I think like if he would have flopped last year, I mean, they would have been in a position to go up and get a Richardson or one of the two top quarterbacks, and they didn't. I mean, the last 2 years they had chances to do that, and they didn't. So I think it was just kind of like an open ending. Like, let's see what he's got. Like I've seen what this guy can do before. And then, I mean, like you said, last year, I mean, I'll say that was his best football. He's never protected the ball like that and led a team. And I mean, he literally put that team on his back a couple times down the stretch there.
So, I mean, one reason I feel like to maybe dial back the pass attempts there's a perception that the Lions have all these weapons because they have Amon-Ra. Now they have Jahmyr Gibbs. They have rookie Sam Laporta, but they have like some receiving depth, but they don't really have like high-end receiving depth. Who would you say is the number 2 target behind Amon-Ra? Is it, quote, still? I put still in air quotes for Marvin Jones because was he even really the number 2 target last year? Like, who would you say the number 2 target is for the Lions?
I do think it's Marvin Jones with a healthy combination of Josh Reynolds and Khalif Raymond, who have just Khalif Raymond, I mean, look at his last 2 seasons. It's absolutely ridiculous what they've continued to get out of him. I mean, just back-to-back career years, and it's like – yeah, it's a weird group. I mean, because they throw so much out there, but I would say that Jones is the de facto until Jamison Williams gets back, and then you really like, all right, get that guy out there, like take the training wheels off. Like that's your number 2 wide receiver. That's what you drafted him for. But I think they're pretty comfortable with Marv. I think he just kind of was the odd man out with the way the Jaguars were going last year. Some of the investments they made, but yeah, I mean, you obviously don't want a playoff team. Marvin Jones going to age 34. That's kind of a questionable thing for sure, especially his speed is dropping off. But I do think he's kind of the clear number 2 going into it with a heavy mix of Reynolds and Raymond, and who knows about Denzel Mims now too. So we'll see. Yeah.
I definitely remember that Marvin Jones was on the Detroit roster before.
Yeah,
I know. It's tough. Like with Marvin Jones, sometimes I find myself talking like he was a Lion last year, or like it's like when was he on the Jaguars?
That is
he is currently on the Lions.
He is. Yeah, I don't want to confuse folks here. So getting to Jamison Williams real quick. With his suspension coming up for the sports betting situation, is the team, do you think, getting impatient with him at all? I know that last year, he missed most of the year. It wasn't his fault. I mean, he tore his knee up in the national championship game the year before. But is there any indication that the team is getting a little impatient with Williams?
I don't think so. I think they are really they're like, okay, this sucks, but obviously like it's kind of his situation was kind of a weird deal. He's not an active player. He's betting on a sport that's not the NFL. So I think they're kind of like, all right, let's re-educate and go with that. But the clock is ticking. I don't think they're at the point of impatience yet. And I think a lot of people on the Detroit media scene have really, really blown this out of proportion. I mean, yeah, there are some red flags, no doubt. There are some things you want to curb as early as possible, but this is a kid. I think he's just freshly turned 22 years old, and he's been in the football spotlight for like 1 season as a player at Alabama. So I think when they took Jamison, they knew there was going to be some fixable immaturity as a young kid. I mean, the clock is ticking. I mean, if he does nothing with the final 11 games and potential playoffs this year, then I think it's going to be like, okay, what did we do? What did we move up for here? But I think that, they've had him on the field. They see the speed. They see what he can do. I mean, it was great to look at him in spring with kind of the training wheels off, going with the first and second team offense, just getting as many reps as possible. And I think they just see the kind of flavor and the elite kind of take the top off of defense potential there. So I think they're going to exercise every ounce of patience that rookie contract allows them to.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That speed that you mentioned and that ability to kind of, scare secondaries into playing off the line a little bit. Does that do, and it's a leading question, I'm sorry, but does that do anything for Amon-Ra St. Brown differently than he's faced over the past 2 seasons with someone with that kind of elite speed that can scare secondaries?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, DJ Chark was a difference maker for Amon-Ra St. Brown last year just by his ability to kind of stretch the field. I mean, you get Jameson out there and you've got the full attention of both safeties and one side of the field. I mean, you've got to remember where he is at all the time. And when you've just got a precision killer like Amon-Ra St. Brown, that's just – I mean, that just makes life so easy. I mean, I look at Sam Laporta as someone who's going to make Amon-Ra St. Brown so easy, being able to go inside and kind of just similar things in similar places. I just, you get Jameson Williams on the field, and I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown's an all-pro type of guy to me, for sure. I mean, that's just like a perfect marriage of skills and what they can do. And personalities couldn't be more separate, too, and stuff like, but I mean, you see the vision. You absolutely see the vision because, I mean, that's a potential superstar in St. Brown, especially when you put Jameson out there.
Right. St. Brown said recently that he wanted to be targeted downfield more. Now, fantasy folks got kind of excited about this. I am not excited about this because I like my cheap PPR points.
Amen.
I don't, I don't want Amon-Ra.
This guy knows what I'm talking about.
I don't want him turning into a complete receiver. For the love of God, Amon-Ra, please do not turn into a complete receiver. I just need you to catch those 3-yard passes. So is that a possibility, do you think? Please tell me no.
I think with Jameson out, you're going to kind of see what it looked like with Chark out as more of a mix to outside and vertical just by the simple fact of being their best playmaker. He's going to have to do those things. So I do think there is going to be less of the quantity in at least the first half of the season, 100%. Yeah. So no, he's gonna be going downfield a lot more.
I appreciate you telling me the truth. That's the hard truth.
No doubt.
We need to few guys we got to ask you about before we get out of here. We need to ask you about Sam Laporta, but how did Jameson Williams look in off-season practice? I mean, did you even get to see him much? I mean, he was practicing, right?
It's the most I've gotten to see of Jameson since they drafted him, and it was a roller coaster ride. The first week was kind of just filled with like, what is going on here? Drops and just like in both like 7-on-7s and situational work. But then like the last 3 days, I think it was when he was working with the first and second team offense. I mean, there was one where he just left somebody in their dust so bad. And he was going at it with CJ Gardner-Johnson and Cam Sutton.
As one does.
They're just screaming in his face and stuff. And I mean, Jamo's kind of a silent killer on the field too. Doesn't say much, but I mean, you saw the speed where he just like shook somebody 5 yards at the line and just like trotted in the end zone all alone. And I mean, he had a couple boneheaded drops for sure that you're like, how the heck did he drop that? But I mean, just some of the plays, and you kind of saw him and Goff getting into a little chemistry, like especially in like the red zone work too, where stuff would break down and Jameson would just be like, oh, I can just sprint across the back of the end zone and get wide open. That's great. And there were some warming signs towards the end of the spring offseason for sure.
Sam Laporta, who you mentioned earlier, has gotten a lot of offseason buzz from beat writers and Lions coaches alike. Is he the favorite to be the primary pass catching, route running tight end for Detroit? And are there enough like intermediate or short targets, do you think, for him and Amon-Ra St. Brown to thrive in this offense?
Yeah, I really do. And he might not like start right out of the gates, but the roles between Brock Wright and Sam Laporta are going to be pretty separate. Laporta's going to be the big slot guy in the red zone. He's going to do a little bit of everything. I think pretty safely he'll be the number one primary receiving tight end pretty much from the get, even if he's not a starter. And I love the way they match up. I love the way they match up because that just plays with Jared Goff's game. And when Jared Goff is on top of his game protecting the ball, he's as precise as they come from the short to intermediate. I mean, you get two guys like that, keep them on both sides of the field. That's hard to keep up with. And I mean, you see how they've built that too. You get an Amon-Ra St. Brown, you get a Sam Laporta underneath. I mean, Jameson Williams going over the top, and that's exactly what the deep vision of this is for. But I think there's enough to go around for sure. And I do think Sam Laporta, I try not to buy too much stock into rookie tight ends, but I think that's going to be a pretty specific role. He's not coming in with the hype of Hawkinson and stuff like that too. And I mean, I nothing against Hawkinson, but it's like he wasn't much of a blocker when he was here either. And he just could never stay on his feet after the catch. No rookie tight end is going to be able to do that better than Sam Laporta. I mean, he lined up out wide more than any college tight end. And I just see play action crossers galore for that dude with Jared Goff.
All right. Well, that's good to know. Yeah, and Hawkinson is cut in the Zach Ertz model of tight end.
Yeah.
Where you catch the ball and you immediately fall to the ground.
Off
the top of your head in fantasy, tight end what for Sam Laporta?
Oh man.
We know you're a reporter and you're trying to.
Yeah.
You want to provide real information, but we just want your gut feel.
Overall rating, like 17 to 20 range.
Okay, that actually would be my guess.
Yeah,
that seems pretty reasonable. So
ceiling of like 15, maybe a top 15 at the most. But yeah, he's going to get enough looks. He's going to have some duds for sure. But like he's going to have some games where he has 10, 11 targets, I feel like.
We've taken a lot of your time. We got to get to Alex Shapiro in just a second, but I'll get you out of here on a boilerplate question. Who is the most impressive Lions skill player you saw in off-season practices?
In off-season practices, I mean, it's Amon-Ra St. Brown by like 10,000 miles. Nobody works as hard as him. It's so cliche, but he is the same crazy person every single snap, every drill. I mean, he's impressive, and he's precise in everything he does, and with the improved secondary, and I mean with the ultra improved secondary of like some like actual starting level cornerbacks out there, he still looks like he's getting better. So he is their best offensive threat by quite a great deal. And he's something else. I mean, we knew he was different from the time he got there, but even the most optimistic and back patting of thinkers isn't going to say that they thought he was going to be this. It's just, the sky's the limit. I mean, he still has more. I feel like
he, importantly, he has that dog in him.
He is the picture next to that definition in the Urban Dictionary.
He has several different dogs in him. Uncontainable levels of dog. Uncontainable levels of information from Mr. Ben Raven from mlive.com. Ben, again, he's on Twitter. We're all still on Twitter, by the way, right?
Still there.
At Benjamin S. Raven. He's going to be on Twitter with Denny and I until the ship goes down, which hopefully never. The Threads ship, by the way, already going down. It seems.
Did it really? I didn't pay.
Yeah, no one's really. Seems like the quote user minutes are already plummeting on Threads, since it seemed to me mostly people posting about getting haircuts. Ben is on Twitter. He's here with us. He's on mlive.com all the time. Really, really great on the Lions beat. Really, really great stuff with us today, Ben. Good luck reporting and good luck with your fantasy teams this year.
Appreciate you. Right back
Thanks,
at
Ben.
you in any time.
Thank you, Ben. We'll get you back a year from now. We're about to jump right in, Alex. By the way, I'll leave it up to our listening audience to determine if I remember what team Marvin Jones was on last year. They can decide. When I was leading a question, it may or may not have sounded like I remembered what team Marvin Jones was on last year. I'll let the audience decide.
I knew off the bat.
I knew that he was on the Houston Texans last year.
Right.
We'll be right back after this with Mr. Alex Shapiro. With the NFL season quickly approaching, now is the perfect time to get your Rotoworld Fantasy Football Draft Guide. Get ready for your draft and stay one step ahead of your league during the preseason with updated player rankings, profiles, projections, mock drafts, and much more. Go to NBCSports.com/draft guide and use promo code DRAFT2023 to save 20% at checkout. That is promo code DRAFT2023 at NBCSports.com/draft guide to save 20% at checkout. It is now our distinct pleasure to someone's got to add him here to the stream.
He's coming.
It's me. There we go. Our NBC Sports colleague, Alex Shapiro from NBC Sports Chicago. Alex, you are currently muted. You haven't started to speak yet. Just warning you before you did try to speak. I made the same joke to Ben, but we want to talk to beat writers from the most interesting teams in a division. The Bears have not been that in a long time. They are at least interesting this year. We don't know if they'll actually be good or not. They did indeed have the number 1 overall pick in this draft before they traded it. But yeah, I'll just really general question. What is the overall vibe and sense around this team heading into training camp?
Well, first of all, Patrick, Denny, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Vibes are high right now at Hallis Hall. I think Justin Fields, they're like, okay, you're our guy, right?
They got around to that. They finally got around to that.
Exactly. So they had the number 1 pick. They had the chance to go get a quarterback. They said, no, we're gonna ride with Justin Fields for at least 1 more year. And I think, this is the first time in Justin Fields' career that he's got some consistency because After year one, the Matt Nagy disaster, the offense just didn't work. They had to reset with Luke Getsy. But then last year, there weren't any skill players. There wasn't really anybody to help them out. This year, now they've got the consistency, and they have so much more around Justin Fields than they did last year. Obviously, the DJ Moore trade, that's the trade that sent the number 1 overall pick to Carolina. Big part of that was getting DJ Moore back. Chase Claypool. I know that trade did not work out last season and got panned. But now you have Chase Claypool a full offseason. He's fully healthy. And Darnell Mooney coming back from his ankle injury. So, a lot went wrong last year. And now there are a lot more pieces, a little bit more consistency. Is anybody saying the Bears are going to contend for a Super Bowl? Probably not. But I don't think people expect the Bears to be the worst team in the NFL again.
that is good. The expectations are higher than that. And you got to a lot of guys we're going to have you elaborate on in a second, but you hit on the main point I wanted to get to is they finally went out and got Justin Fields a supporting cast. Is there any sense that this could be like an Eagles type situation where the Bears open things up for their young quarterback, or is this still going to remain predominantly a run-based offense, one where maybe we're still complaining in the fantasy football community that there's not enough attempts to go around for these skilled players? Or do you think there is going to be a concerted effort to actually become like a much more balanced and maybe even like a slightly more pass-heavy offense?
Yeah, I don't think I would go as far as to say a pass-heavy offense, but certainly more balanced. I think the Bears are always going to be a run-first team. When Matt Eberflus, Ryan Poles, and Luke Getsy all joined the Bears, they made it pretty clear. We're going to run the football. And every coach says that, right? Every coach says we want to run the football. But last year they actually did it. They were really dedicated to using David Montgomery, Khalil Herbert, and then obviously Justin Fields as a rusher. I think to a degree that's going to continue, especially when you look at the investments they made at running back. They lost David Montgomery, but then they bring in Deontay Foreman and Travis Homer, and they draft Roshan Johnson. Of course, they still have Khalil Herbert, who was great last season. So I do think that they are still going to be a run-first team. But again, I also think they will be passing the ball more. There were times last season when the passing attack, there was nothing doing. Darnell Mooney got hurt week 12. Chase Claypool, we just talked about them bringing him in. He goes down. So there just weren't a ton of options towards the end of the year. They really had to lean on their running backs. So I think it'll skew more to the middle. I don't know that it's going to ever be the Eagles thing. And then when we're talking about the offense as a whole, I don't know that we're going to talk about a huge boost like the Eagles did, where people are like, are they or are they not a good team? And then all of a sudden they're in the Super Bowl. Just because I think the Eagles were maybe better suited, better prepared, had their roster a little bit more,
a little more depth.
Yeah, exactly. They had that depth, that defensive line that they were able to just roll out wave after wave after wave. The Bears still have more holes on their roster than the Eagles did when they made their big turn. So I don't know that that's going to be a huge leap like the Eagles, but maybe steps in the right direction.
Yeah, just to be clear, I wasn't intimating that they might be like the next Eagles, just kind of on offense, like the pass attempts, which you did answer both. And Bears, as you've said, probably do not have that depth to make an Eagles type leap in 2023.
Alex, you talked about Fields a second ago, and from a fantasy standpoint, his rushing was otherworldly last year. He just went nuclear. He had 10 rushing attempts, at least 10 rushing attempts in 8 of his 16 full games, which is, just unreal. He would have signed up, to take him in the second or third round of fantasy drafts if he had known that going into the season. I have seen some chatter from coaches, maybe a little bit from Fields himself, about him saying, I don't know if we're going to be doing that 10, 12, 15 rush thing every single game this year. Do you think that's part of Fields' game right now as a young quarterback getting used to the NFL game? Or do you really think that there might be a concerted effort to reel that back a little bit?
Yeah, I think there might be an effort to reel back. The designed runs are always going to be a part of it. There's always going to be some element of designed runs. But a lot of those rushes last season were just scrambles because everything fell apart. We talked about the playmakers just not being able to get open. The offensive line was not very good, so he's running for his life. So a good chunk of those rushes were just because Justin Fields is kind of dancing around, trying to make something happen. There's nothing there, so he's just forced to take off, right? Improved offensive line play, improved playmakers around here. I think that alone will cut into Justin Fields' rushing attempt numbers. But the designed runs, I think, are always going to be a part of the equation because, I mean, that's his strength. His strength is really his deep ball. He throws an incredible deep ball, and he does want to be a pocket passer first. He wants to throw the football first. But since he is so good at running the football, I think it's always going to be a part of the Bears' offensive game plan.
Good to hear.
Yeah, very good to hear. Yes. I guess was the shoulder injury on a run, by the way, last year? I believe it was.
He's been dinged up so many times.
That's true.
It's like which shoulder injury? The ribs. There was the ankle. I think one was on a run. Good portion of them were on sacks.
Anyway, the point very much stands anyway that they're probably going to try to protect him a little more.
Yes.
And Alex, you mentioned the big move for DJ Moore. Again, impossible to understate how big of a part of that number 1 overall pick trade he was for the Bears. He's a guy in fantasy who's already had like a lot of really good seasons, but he's someone we're always just kind of been expecting like there to be another level to his game. And it was really hard to unlock that in Carolina where he just didn't have the quarterback play. How is he fitting into this Bears offense? How is he meshing with Justin Fields? I know you haven't gotten to see a ton. We haven't even put pads on yet. Training camp has not begun, but how has he been meshing with this Bears offense?
I'll say I've actually been impressed by how quickly things have come along. Now you hear quarterbacks and wide receivers, they always say, oh yeah, our chemistry is already great, right? And you're like, okay, let me see it. In this case, we actually have seen some of those things that point to there being early chemistry. Over at OTAs and minicamp last season, there were balls hitting the ground all over the place. The deep ball just wasn't there whatsoever. Obviously, people aren't panicking because it's like May and June. So like whatever, they'll figure it out. But This year, we saw a lot more of those passes being completed, and DJ Moore was on the receiving end of a bunch of them. And not just deep balls, intermediate balls, short game. To me, there was a concerted effort between those two guys and, the organization as a whole to get Justin Fields and DJ Moore on the same page early. 1 to 2. Let's make it happen a lot. And we did. We saw it a lot to the point where, we're looking around. We're like, oh man, is this for real? Like, is this going to be for real? He did make a lot of impressive plays. He made a lot of impressive plays. It's going to look different, as you said, when training camp happens and they got the pads on, they can play a little bit more physical football. But at least the early summer stuff, we did see that DJ Moore effect right away.
Staying in the receiver room here, Chase Claypool, who you mentioned earlier, just momentarily, there were some issues with Claypool last year. I remember several reports about him not picking up the playbook, not being able to get playing time, because of that, and some other issues. Maybe he was dinged up a little bit here and there. So how are things going with Claypool this offseason? And can we expect him to be a part of 2 or 3 receiver sets for Chicago this year?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to answer the last part of your question first, I mean, you got to remember the Bears traded away what turned out to be the number 32 overall pick in the draft to bring in Chase Claypool. So I fully expect them to give him every opportunity possible to show, yeah, I was worth that trade because, right, they also have to make a decision coming up after the season. Are they going to extend him or are they going to let him go? So I think they are going to give him plenty of opportunities to make a name for himself in this offense. Now, going into differences between this year and last year, Justin Fields actually himself, completely unrelated question, brought up Chase Claypool and how his understanding of the offense is better and his, I don't want to say work ethic. I don't really remember exactly what it is, and because that has such a bad connotation when you hear his work ethic is better. But the way he is working at the offense, it's notably improved this year to last year. Here's the other thing with this Bears offense. I mean, every NFL offense is tough for every position to learn, but the Bears in particular ask their wide receivers to learn pretty much every single position on the field, X, Y, Z, and then they have all these different rules about what happens based on coverages, based on, what the QB says, whatever. So there are so many different options, and it's tough for wide receivers to be able to pick that up in the middle of the season, which is why I think we saw a lesser route tree for Chase Claypool last year. And for what it's worth, I thought Chase was actually starting to figure it out in that Green Bay game in the latter portions of the season. They finally started hitting for a few connections, a few completions, and then bam, Chase Claypool gets hurt, misses out. And then when Chase is healthy, then Justin Fields was hurt. So they never really got to get back on track. So with a full offseason, learning everything, I do expect Chase Claypool to take a step forward. He's got the ability. He's got the talent. We've seen it. Now with all of these months to learn, to study, going through training camp with these guys. And like I said, I think the Bears are going to give him every opportunity to make a name for himself. Is he going to be a wide receiver one? No, DJ Moore is the wide receiver one. But between him and Mooney, I think both of those guys should be seriously involved in the passing attack.
Who do you like more? I'm sorry, Pat, just real quick on this. Who do you like more between Mooney and Claypool to step into that wide receiver 2 role?
Oh, that's the question, man. That's the number one question. I think right now Mooney has the edge just because he's had more of a relationship with Justin Fields. He's had more time in this offense, and he's kind of proven it more consistently. Last year was a dud, right? When the Bears asked him to be wide receiver 1, it didn't work out in the early portions of the season. But when Mooney has had the opportunity to be a 2, he's been great. So I think, him sliding back into that wide receiver 2 role, he should be able to thrive again. And just because I've seen it more and more consistently from Mooney, I'll give him the nod. But I mean, Chase Claypool's got all the tools, and he does different things. He's like a bigger bodied guy, more 50-50 ball guy, where Mooney uses his elusiveness to really create separation, gets open in the middle of the field, yak attack. So they do different things, which is great for the Bears offense, obviously. But right now, on July 20th, I'll probably give Mooney the nod.
Okay.
Humble brag that you remembered what day it was.
Definitely looked at my computer screen right down there.
And Denny had read my mind. That's what I was just wondering who the number 2 was right now, but not surprised. The answer is it's just got to shake out in camp. And it's an unusual problem for the Bears of recent history to have, like who's going to be the number 2 where they've actually got 2 really good options. And so really, really fascinating top of the receiver core for the Bears. They also have 2 or 3 running backs. Kind of a crazy situation after David Montgomery, almost his entire rookie contract was kind of an every down player. Khalil Herbert really did kind of begin to chip into that last year. But how do you think the backfield touches are shaking out between Khalil Herbert, rookie Roschon Johnson, free agent addition Deontay Foreman, a really good year in Carolina? Really, really hard backfield to predict in fantasy football.
Yes, for fantasy purposes, I am very wary of this backfield just because I think it will truly be a running back by committee. They could totally take a hot hand approach. All 3 guys really, I think, are capable of, earning starting touches. Khalil Herbert's going to be the guy who gets the first bite at the apple. The Bears have said that. Like day 1, Khalil Herbert is going to be number 1 on the reps chart. They won't even call it a depth chart yet. It's a reps chart, not a depth chart. Right, exactly. That's where we're at. So he's going to get the first bite at the apple, but from there, all bets are off. And Deontay Foreman, I mean, we saw it last year after the Christian McCaffrey trade. He proved, hey, I can shoulder the load. And he said, I'm not coming in here to back up anybody. I'm coming up here. I'm coming to Chicago to shoulder the load myself. And then Roschon Johnson, the Bears are so high on him. They love him. Mm-hmm. And, looking at Texas, that tape, he brings a physical style. I mean, a bruising running back that I think will remind a lot of fans a lot of David Montgomery here in Chicago. So they could have a serious 3-headed monster here, and it is just far too early to say if there's a lead guy. There may never be a lead guy for the Bears.
That's tough. That's tough news for us.
It is. I know it's tough for fantasy.
Is any even one role set? Like so-and-so's the third down back, so-and-so's the goal line back, or is it's just all up for grabs right now, you think?
Here's what I will say. Khalil Herbert, the biggest knock on him last year was pass protection. So that kind of takes him out of third down stuff, right? But he knows that. All the coaches know that. So that's been his main focus. He's been really working on pass pro. He's done boxing to try and improve his first punch, his strike.
Oh.
So, yeah, so he knows. He's like, if I want to stay on the field, I have to improve in pass pro. We'll see if he actually was able to make strides. Otherwise, Roschon Johnson is really well known for his pass protection. And if I'm just watching my eyes, like, trying to make sense of it myself as a total outsider, I think Khalil Herbert's rushing style plays great as either a change of pace back. If we give Deontay Foreman the first 2 series, then Khalil Herbert comes in for series 3 and is great, or is wonderful as a first and second down back because he's so good in that zone scheme that Luke Getsy has installed, right? The one cut and go back. Roschon Johnson, we talked about his bruising physical style. He's hard to bring down. He's a good pass catcher. He's a good pass blocker. He could be a short yardage guy, a goal line guy. So again, this is just me speculating based on what I think of these players, but honestly, it's too early to tell with these guys.
I had a quick question just about the environment of the team, or the culture of the Bears, not just these Bears, but all the Bears teams down the line. Is there a desire among the coaches and among the players to have a modernized offense, something that can go toe to toe with the elite teams? Or, is it like, we're in Chicago, tough city, cold city, everybody's miserable. Not everybody, but it's in the winter, it's very cold.
Only miserable in February when it's been cold for 3 months and it's going to be cold for another 3 months.
Right, Summer starts June 27th.
Yeah, we want to
from St. Louis.
Establish a run. We want to run over teams. That's who we are. That's Bears football. Do you think that has taken hold, or do people want, fans, players, do they want a modernized offense here?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
It's clear the Bears love their tradition, respect the history. And that's top down. That's Ryan Poles. That's Matt Eberflus. That is the players. They make mention of that a lot. It is a joy and a privilege to play in Chicago, especially the defensive players say that, where an unbelievable list of linebackers have played here, where it's known for defense. DeMarcus Walker, I think, said he's just so thankful to be playing in a city where defense is appreciated. It's the first time in his career. It's like, this rules. People love defense here. And we've already mentioned that the Bears want to run the football, right? So that plays into it. However, they know they need to pass. They need to gain chunk yards. They need to score points in today's NFL. So it's kind of both, right? They just want to be a full, well-rounded football team that scores a lot of points. They've never had a 4,000-yard passer. I believe Justin Fields on another podcast said he's like, it's going to happen. This is the year. I'm going to do it. Like, we're going to have a 4,000-yard passer in this organization. So they're aware of all of those things. And yeah, they know they got to score points to win.
Yes, please.
Hopefully. Alex, we're going to get you out of here in just a second, but is there anyone we haven't mentioned that caught your attention on offense? Equimenius St. Brown still on the roster. Velus Jones is still on the roster. Cole Kmet, of course, took a big step forward near the end of last season. Because we've all been focusing on like the bigger names they now have up top and kind of the backfield confusion. But any of these more like secondary guys catch your attention this offseason? Yeah.
On offense specifically, I'll throw one name that didn't come up just now. Robert Tonyan. Wow. He's a guy who has experience in Luke Getsy's offense from their time together in Green Bay, and who I think really complements Cole Kmet really well. Cole Kmet has, in my opinion, developed into a really nice inline blocker who can leak out and catch passes. He's kind of that dual tight end guy. I can come in and help in protection, or I can leak down the middle, in the flat, down the seam, whatever, and catch a few balls. Robert Tonyan, I think, is going to slide into that more pure pass-catching tight end role so that the Bears can use more two tight end sets. I think that helps Cole Kmet, and it helps Robert Tonyan, to be honest. And for my money, Robert Tonyan made the best catch of the early stages of the summer program. Wow. He shook a guy in the back of the end zone, went towards the back corner, Fields threw an absolute laser beam where only Tonyan could make a play, and Tonyan made a super athletic catch to bring it in for a touchdown, where it was like, oh, okay, that's what they want out of this. So I'm going to throw both tight ends out there. I think both tight ends are going to be viable in this offense, are going to be important in this offense. But when we're looking a little bit more under the radar, Robert Tonyan, could make an impact as tight end too.
Unfortunately for fantasy purposes, Cole Kmet is a good blocker, and we
always talk about that, Alex. The motif on the show: you don't want your tight ends to be good at blocking.
No, please.
Hey, if you're good at blocking, that means you're going to be good in the play action game. That's a lot of third down opportunities.
You get kittled though too often when you can block.
Yeah.
You go 4 weeks without scoring a touchdown, then you score 3 all in one game. There's more. By the way, we're talking about the hard-nosed identity of the Bears. Why are they going to move to Arlington Heights? Stay in Chicago.
So they can own the land. It's as easy as that. They don't own Soldier Field, and I don't think the city is going to sell them Soldier Field. So they're going to go own they do own the land. They bought it. They bought Arlington Park. They own the land. If I, as a business owner, had the opportunity between leasing my home stadium and owning my home stadium, I would pick owning my home stadium 10 out of 10 times.
That's you sound like maybe a businessman. But you attend any Cubs Cardinals this weekend? By the way, I'm in St. Louis, Missouri, coming at you right now.
You know, I will not be going to Cubs Cardinals this weekend. We have some friends visiting from out of town. Going to Wrigley Field is not on our agenda. Also, you know, I grew up watching the Southsiders. I come from a split household, so my father's side, Southsiders, my mother's side, Northsiders. I guess baseball's passed down patrilineally because I grew up watching the Sox more than the Cubs. Now I don't have hate in my heart for the Cubs.
Well, that's a problem.
Yeah, why not? you got to get more hate in that heart. Alex, by the way, congratulations on your White Sox winning today. I saw that. I just wanted to say,
wow,
there you go.
They did it. Nice job.
Did it.
Yeah, there, Denny. I don't know if you're following the Sox season. It's been a little rough. But
really? Sorry.
Cardinals, but
Really,
Alex,
really
thank you so much for coming in here and dropping some Bears, some NFC North knowledge. At Alex Shapiro, MBCS on Twitter, at NBC Sports Chicago on the interwebs. Yeah, thanks so much. Sorry that your life isn't over now that training camp is starting.
Yeah.
But,
no, it's okay. My life is just beginning. I'm
That's
actually very
true.
excited. We get to watch football. We get to watch real football. It's going to be great.
Awesome. Well, Alex, thank you so much for taking time to join us. Really, really, really good stuff. Really good stuff from both of our guests, Denny. But now we have to am I turning yellow again?
Well, you're sort of turning pixelated. I feel like I'm podcasting with you in 2009.
I don't know what is. I mean, Charter Communications is going to be facing a lawsuit. Is all I can really say.
I have Comcast. I have Comcast, and it has never failed me.
It has never failed you on the podcast, or if mine is somewhat routinely failing me in the past week or two, and we are looking very powerfully.
I love Comcast personally.
Yeah. So we're looking very strongly into taking a quick break and then returning right after this. Juan Soto and the San Diego Padres are looking to climb back into the postseason picture, and they will have a shot to inch closer on Sunday MLB leadoff in Detroit when they face the Tigers this weekend. Stream the matchup live on July 23rd at 11:30 a.m. Eastern exclusively on Peacock. And don't forget, find all of your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. That is amazon.com/NBC Sports. Well, Denny, two other teams in this division. We got to, again, real upset that the Bears and Lions are the two interesting ones. And
yes,
not that the Vikings are uninteresting. And we got a lot of interesting questions with the Green Bay Packers. Where we'll start, and I'll just ask you about, I feel like one of the more divisive players in offseason drafting, and certainly in the redraft drafting really ramps up in the next month, Christian Watson.
Mm-hmm.
Is he going to regress? Is he going to break out further? Can he possibly run that hot again?
Right.
So on and so forth. What is your Christian Watson take?
My take on Watson has cooled considerably over the past month as I have read smart people's takes on Christian Watson instead of my own. And it seems that he's going to be extremely reliant on big plays and on touchdowns. Now, I'm not engaging in the kind of analysis that says if you take away all of the guy's big plays, then he's not good. Then he's bad. I'm not doing that. Okay, he will he will happen into big plays because that's his game. I don't know how consistent he can be. He might win you weeks. He might be a complete dud in your lineup once in a while. So I don't know if I can take him at that wide receiver 20 ADP where he's going right now. Pat, I think you're on mute.
Say, Denny, you got to live it a little dangerously. Everyone's touchdown rate can remain that prolific. There was absolutely nothing fluky about it whatsoever.
I do hate to say the explosive guy can't keep being explosive. That just seems wrong. But he was really, really reliant on touchdowns and huge plays, huge downfield plays last year. And so at wide receiver 20, I don't know, with Romeo Dobbs at wide receiver 55, I can get more into Dobbs at ADP.
Tell us why.
Yeah. And here's why. So just here are some positives from Romeo Dobbs's rookie season. Remember, we were going into the season. We were saying, Dobbs is going to be the wide receiver one. Aaron Rodgers didn't like him. Okay, and imagine that Aaron Rodgers not liking a rookie receiver, and I think that hurt him. I think that hurt him in the pecking order. Rodgers was dead set on Allen Lazard being the wide receiver one for Green Bay. That wasn't good for Dobbs. But on the full season, and Dobbs missed 5 games with an ankle injury. On the full season, Dobbs matched Lazard in targets per route run at 24% and ran the second most routes on the team, despite missing, like I said, those 5 games, and then a part of another. Next Gen Stats gives Dobbs the best separation numbers among all Packers receivers last year. And then, when you look at some comments from both Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love this offseason, I think that you can read the tea leaves a little bit. Love said this. I'll read it to the class if you don't mind, real quick.
I don't mind.
Jordan Love said this of Romeo Dobbs, quote, "When in doubt, you can throw it out there and he's going to make a play, and he's done a great job of going and getting the ball wherever he's at. He's made some really tough catches, and it kind of just builds everybody's confidence. It builds my confidence in him, just being able to throw the ball out there and know he is always going to make a play." I should also mention, just from a metric standpoint, Dobbs dominated targets when Jordan Love was playing in the preseason last year. Okay, yes, we are going to preseason stats, folks. We are going all the way back, but we don't have much to work with. I don't have much. So we have to look at when they've been on the field together, and when they have, Love has looked for Dobbs a lot.
Denny, you seem a little higher on Jordan Love than a lot of people in the industry. I mean, is that remaining the case as we get closer, as you've ingested even more data over the past few months? Or is there any bullish, like, single QB redraft case for Jordan Love, or is that just not really happening in 2023?
Well, okay, yeah. When I'll say that I like Jordan Love, I guess more than most in the fantasy analysis community, I'll say that I like him as a late round dart throw and as a super flex option if you're playing in that format. Now, as far as like later round quarterbacks, I'd much prefer Daniel Jones. I'd much prefer Tua. I know that those guys go ahead of Jordan Love, but if you are waiting on quarterback, I'd prefer those guys over Love. Love's I don't know. I can't count it against him that he didn't overtake Aaron Rodgers, Packers legend, as the starter. He was never going to play. People, he hasn't played since in 3 years there. Of course he hasn't. If Aaron Rodgers had played another 10 years, Jordan Love would have never gotten a snap in Green Bay.
I'm holding it against them. I mean, I don't get it. I would simply overtake Aaron Rodgers.
It can't be that hard.
That's what I would do. Look, we finally got him out of there. You overtook him last year. So you finally forced the trade to that guy.
So Romeo Dobbs, wide receiver 55. I think as far as like builds go, as far as draft builds go, I don't find myself as a 0 RB, radical. I'm not in the position to say, I love Romeo Dobbs as my wide receiver 12, but if you go heavy at running back and other positions early on, and you're sort of scraping by on receiver, I think you can do a lot worse than grabbing Dobbs late in drafts as your wide receiver 3 or 4 or something.
Are we expecting the dynamic between Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon to remain the same, where they've been kind of at like this frustrating stalemate for like 2 years now, ping-ponging back and forth a little bit? Aaron Jones has, of course, maintained the lead. Pretty disappointing year for A.J. Dillon last year. No more Aaron Rodgers, though. An already balanced offense will probably get even more so. What are we expecting with Aaron Jones this year?
AJ Dillon has a lot of contingency value, and I do understand that, and I get why people, would draft him saying he has some upside. His upside is completely 100% related to Aaron Jones missing time, maybe significant time this year. Also, AJ Dillon's price point in redraft doesn't leave a lot of cushion for those purposes. You're not taking him in the 16th round and saying, okay, well, if Aaron Jones misses time, I have the guy. You have to spend real draft capital on AJ Dillon again. Not as much as last year, which was ludicrous last year. It's not as ludicrous. It's still a little bit ludicrous. And I think that Aaron Jones is a pretty good value. And I think that Aaron Jones fits a lot of because of his pass catching ability and his pass catching involvement in the Green Bay offense. I think that he fits a lot of draft builds. Like I'm interested in him when I start a draft with a lot of receivers or tight ends. But I also think that, if you want to get greedy with running back, you can get Aaron Jones as, I guess, your running back 3 if you want. And that sounds silly to me in a good way.
It does sound very silly in a very good way. The Packers, though, just weird, fascinating team where everything's kind of changed. Not very high wattage in the passing game this year. No even real third pass catcher to talk about. I mean, I guess unless you want to talk about some of these rookie tight ends, but just a really different, strange situation in Green Bay than we're used to.
Well, the Athletic reported today that Luke Musgrave, their rookie tight end, is widely expected to be the primary pass route running, pass catching tight end in that offense and be something that Robert Tonyan was in spurts. Tonyan, of course, suffered the catastrophic knee injury a couple years ago. Never really got all the way back to where he was before that, when he was, I guess, called Baby Kittle at one point. So Musgrave is someone I think who could be interesting. And you don't have to draft him. I mean, he's going to be on the waiver wire. You can count on me talking incessantly about Luke Musgrave in 2023.
You already kind of have been. So I do like this young man. We the Vikings because it's yet another year of Kirk Cousins. It's Justin Jefferson being as elite as they come. Not a lot of big names in the passing core beyond, with the notable exception of first-round rookie Jordan Addison. We'll close the show talking about Addison, but just first, I got to ask you, where are you at on the Alexander Mattison discourse? Who, one of the most controversial players in fantasy this summer. I'm kind of the opinion that if he were a good player, he would have forced a lot more touches during the course of his rookie contract, even with Dalvin Cook ahead of him. I feel like he could be a danger of losing touches to some of these more anonymous backups, that they could still sign somebody. Just where are you at on the Alexander Mattison discourse? What do you think is an appropriate ADP point for him?
Yeah, I think that his current ADP point is appropriate in my view. RB25 right now in half PPR formats. That is according to Fantasy Football Calculator. I'm not using Underdog, where the sickos.
He's somehow the RB6 right now.
He's going.
He's simultaneously. He's the RB6 and the RB43 at the same time on Underdog.
Just going just ahead of Jonathan Taylor. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, so I think he's settled in a reasonable area. So I'll read some of the players who are around him. You have Rachaad White, James Conner, Pacheco, Montgomery. I'd probably take Montgomery over him. I might be enticed into Rachaad White, depending on who is the quarterback for the Bucs. But like DeAndre Swift is going in that area, and I much rather take Alexander Mattison over Swift just because of the locked in workload. One thing about Mattison that makes me a little bit reticent to say that he has a ceiling. I just don't know where the ceiling will be, because this is a Vikings team that throws a lot in the red zone and, importantly, in the green zone, meaning inside the 10-yard line. Okay, so they're throwing as much as anyone, including the Chiefs, inside that 10-yard line. That just doesn't leave a lot of touchdown base juice for their, even if he's an every down back, for their lead back in Madison. I don't know if that's there, but he should be fine. He should be a stabilizing force in your running back spot. He should be. It is too worth mentioning with this coaching staff. I think they were expected increase their running back targets last year, and they really did kind of the opposite. No, they did not. Yeah, that didn't happen.
Dalvin was even less involved as a pass catcher instead of more involved, which is all the hype. I mean, Alexander Mattison has flashed some pass catching chops in the past. But yeah, he low end RB2 feels fine to me for Alexander Mattison. RB20 to 24 range. Yeah, there was always the perception that he was like a plug and play RB1 when Dalvin Cook was injured. And that happened sometimes. He had some memorable failures. It just seems like it's going to be more low end RB2 to me than maybe like life hack RB1. Is life hack RB1 in the range of outcomes?
I don't think so. I think that the guys around him, the running backs going around him, have that in their range of outcomes, and he doesn't unless hey, I could be wrong. Maybe Kevin O'Connell wants to establish it inside the 10 this year and wants to just run Madison into the end zone over and over. And if that happens, I'm going to look pretty silly here, and Madison's going to be a top 12 running back in fantasy. But I think that really you're going to draft Alexander Madison, and you're not going to think about him for the rest of the year.
Yeah, that's for better or worse. Hopefully for better.
Right. I mean, he'll just be fine. He'll just be fine. You know, you get your 14 PPR points and you move on each week.
We'll close the show talking about Jordan Addison, who was cited for driving 140 miles an hour in the early morning on Thursday. That was 85 over the speed limit in a 55. Probably lucky to not be in jail for a day or two for that. He probably will not get a suspension for that, but now that'll be the talk of the Jordan Addison town for the first few weeks of training camp. But there's any redraft love for this guy who is a first-round pick. People are kind of scared because he's behind like the ultimate alpha in Justin Jefferson, but there's still a lot of other targets to go around in this offense. Can Jordan Addison, what can he be in like 12-team league redraft teams in 2023?
Yeah, so in my Vikings preview, which you could find on rotoworld.com in the fantasy football section, I raised some questions. I'm only asking questions about Jordan Addison, and some of my questions are his major productivity drop-off in his final year of college. That could be explained by the USC offensive system just being really unfriendly for receivers, even, I guess, elite receivers.
Well, it was always explained to me that they throw to the open guy. Like, they don't force it in a USC system. He came from Pitt, I believe, where he was like the sun, the moon, and the stars, or they forced him the ball. Where at USC, that wasn't the program. There was no need to force him the ball. Right. He just had to take what he could get. And there was a lot to take, but a lot of people to get it.
That's right. Yeah. So, I mean, and that could explain that way. He did not have a good NFL combine at all. Okay. He has an undisclosed, unknown injury that has kept him out of off-season workouts and practices, all of them. Okay. And the coaching staff are saying things like, looking forward to seeing him on the field. So that I think that raises some red flags. And now this speeding thing. Now, like you said, the speeding thing probably not going to result in any kind of suspension. But man, I feel like there are some warning flags about this guy headed into the regular season. And they have a guy in KJ Osborne who was really good as a wide receiver too last year, really efficient when he overtook Adam Thielen as the wide receiver 2 for Minnesota, just behind Jefferson. He was good, and I spelled that out. I'm not going to bore you with the numbers. I'll never bore you with the numbers. But to me, a guy like Osborne, who's familiar with this Kevin O'Connell system, who has a year in it, who was good for a month and a half last year as the number 2 wideout, I feel like he might have the edge on Addison going into this. And again, I know this sounds crazy because Addison's a high draft, has a lot of draft capital. He was the best receiver in the nation two years ago. If you just look at productivity. So man, I struggle. I struggle to just completely write off KJ Osborne.
Who scores more PPR points, Jordan Addison or KJ Osborne?
I mean, I don't want this to be clipped by anyone, so I'm just going to say Jordan Addison.
That works. That makes sense. Also works as a good way to end the show. I apologize for my audio difficulties. I hope the Charter Corporation is scared of the team of lawyers I am assembling. Denny knows all about my team of lawyers.
Yes, they're actually in my living room right now.
We will be coming after you, Charter, if these upload speeds do not recover. I have no idea what's going on. But thank you so much to MLive.com's Ben Raven, to NBC Sports Chicago's Alex Shapiro for coming in to talk about the Lions and the Bears. Really, really good stuff. We're continuing our team preview series on Monday with, I believe, the AFC West. It is indeed the AFC West. Going to have some exciting guests for that one, too. Surely get some really good information. Hope you've been enjoying the division preview series so far. Training camp begins next week, so keep it locked to rotoworld.com for all the latest news and updates. For Denny Carter, I'm Patrick Daugherty. Thank you so much for listening. We will be back next week.